So my name is Pilar, and I defend my thesis last week. So thank you. The main topic of my thesis is quality in education, and one of the issues I was interested in was the online instructor roles. In my case, this topic has been researched during a long time ago, but in my case, I use a top-down approach in order to see or to determine these kind of roles. In my case, it's true that I have similar results from other research works. We found that the online instructor should have the pedagogical role, the course designer role, the social role, the technical role, and the managerial one. But in our case, we also found that, as we have been talking during this morning, the teacher or the instructor has a new role, which is the life skill promoter role. In this case, we think that our future work should be aligned with this kind of new role, and because educators today need to help their students to succeed in life. And for that reason, I agree with, for example, Dr. Lisa, by saying that we should separate skills and capabilities. In our case, our intention is to operationalize a philosophical framework, which is the capability approach from Marta, and we are trying to conceptualize this framework into an online higher education environment. In this case, we are going to try to give some kind of guidelines in order to incorporate these kind of pillars. We talk about the playfulness, the emotions, the practical reason, the political factors. So in this philosophical framework, we have all these kind of capabilities, and we are trying to conceptualize into an online environment. So this is going to be my future works.
Gracias, Doctora. Okay, my name is Greig Krull. I'm from South Africa, and I've been here at UOC for about 2.5 years now. My research is in terms of looking at how students make use of multiple different devices and the associated services and applications that come with it, and how that's influencing or changing the patterns and behaviors of students who study online. So to give you a brief kind of scenario is that a student may start the day taking a train to work, and on the train be reading some of their course notes on their mobile phone. They might then get to work. During a coffee break, they might log on to the virtual learning environment or the learning management system and reply to a post using the desktop that they use at work. Then they might get home in the evening, sitting on the couch watching TV. They might use their tablet to look up something and start watching a YouTube video, and later on they might then move into the kitchen, sit at the table, open up their laptop and start working on their next assignment, and at the same time might also be using their phone via WhatsApp and communicating with one of their friends who's also doing the same course and discussing some of the thoughts with them. And that's the kind of scenario in terms of that I was interested in looking at in terms of my research is the kind of different spaces and places, both physical and virtual, where students are learning, and the kinds of influences that the different devices and the different tools that students learn. And so we're seeing that there's, as Mitch was saying, there's a greater blurring between the formal and the informal, in that students are relying on technologies, social media, their own personal technology, etc., that are outside of the bounds of the university systems, the university environments, and how that increasingly, what we've talked about here today, this morning as well, is in terms of students wanting to take control over more aspects of their own learning. And really it's about flexibility in giving students choice in terms of what they want to learn at. So I'm looking in terms of my research, looking at how students make use of both, for example, in terms of devices, both fixed devices like desktops and laptops, as well as their handheld devices like mobile phones and tablets, etc. And although I talk a lot about devices, it's the associated services and software that's important as well. So one of the major, for example, experiences in terms of learning that has really made a difference in terms of learning behaviors is, for example, is around cloud computing and cloud services, and students making use of Dropbox, making use of Google Drive to have a backup of their work of wherever they are. They can access their resources wherever they are, but also to collaborate and share with other students as well. So I'm looking at a case study approach using UOC as one university of example of learning. The other, you're looking at UNISA in South Africa as an example of distance learning. And in South Africa's case, particularly one of the interesting things compared to the Spanish case is that we talk a lot about here at UOC, especially for online learning, and the internet access is taken for granted. And to study at UOC, you need a decent, affordable internet access, and for most students at UOC, that's not a problem. But for example, in the UNISA's case, particularly in rural areas in South Africa, it is, although students are resourceful and they plan when they need to, sometimes just being able to access a YouTube video and being able to watch it can be quite tricky. And so those are some of the issues that my research is looking at. Okay, so colleagues, we have about 10 to 15 minutes or so, so I thought we could maybe, now that we've given some background about ourselves and about our research, if you would like to just pick up on any of the points that were discussed this morning, some of the issues that really came to the fore for you, and some of the areas where you think we haven't maybe really understood yet what the innovations are, or maybe what the challenges still are that we need to look at.
Well, I've been, and I've talked about this, sorry. What I'm saying is that we are talking about results or solutions, but sometimes we don't look at barriers, okay? And I've been seeing this in general in my research, for instance, no? Like how to motivate, learners are responding positively to this, and so on, but very often we don't analyze the barriers. We look for solutions, not analyzing the sickness, let's say, okay? We are trying to find a solution, not analyzing. And I think this is maybe a cultural thing. We like to look on the bright side of things. It's like, it's not positive to look on negative things or something like that. In this case, I think that it is important to know the boundaries, as we have been talking, to really analyze the problems, but also to spot the barriers learners are facing. I've been talking about this inner part. So how the learner is experiencing this learning process. It's very difficult, but we really need to know to help them. In my research, for instance, I'm looking at one of the barriers, this anxiety they are suffering, no? To help them, because sometimes the affective dimension is not taken into account in this role. It's cognitive, behavior, blah, 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 but we are a human being, and we are made of many things. So I've been like analyzing this. We are a result of our society, of the events we are suffering and living right now. We are a result of many things, and sometimes we just stay at the surface level, no? Like the very touchable things. Maybe it's very challenging, but I really think that understanding society and the learner, it's mandatory, because I think sometimes we are not ready for technologies like the printing press. Oh, we have the printing press, we have books now, knowledge is all around. Okay, but you have now a population not ready to read. So teach them how to read, but how do they need to read as well? Why is this positive for them? So we need to try the balance of what we offer, but what they need. And to know what they need, we really need to look into their inner part, this maybe affective part, because we are not aware of the barriers they are facing sometimes. And we take for granted many things. It's not that easy, but okay, they are like looking on the barriers, the not positive parts, and also these inner barriers that they can find, maybe also to push these boundaries we are talking about.
Yeah, there's been a lot of inspiring ideas this morning that one could reflect on. I think there's a lot of consensus in the room amongst a lot of the speakers, and I think a lot of people are coming from similar places and similar sort of frameworks. as I've mentioned, one of my objectives, and I think one of the most important challenges, is reconceptualizing what learning is in digital spaces and how we can connect that across our lives. I think that supporting learning is one of the most important challenges of higher education. I think that one second. What did I want to say? Yes, sorry. In terms of what I wanted to talk about was my experience as well in doctoral school at the UOC, which is an online open university model. It's 20 years old, so it's still recently in infant, and I think the UOC has a lot of things that they can learn in terms of how they organize doctoral pedagogy, which is a very specific form of pedagogy. We are lucky enough to be 5 students here, 5 doctoral candidates who are on grants, but we have hundreds of colleagues across the world, in Latin America, in Asia, in maybe not too many in North America, but there probably are a few. And there's not a lot of interaction, you know. There's a lot of, online learning is one of the fundamental elements, is the socio-constructive nature of online learning, or social learning, peer learning. And we have, I think that's a challenge that UOC can specifically look at, but also many online universities, how to engage doctoral communities, graduate communities in learning from each other. We have a very, I can speak for myself, but I'm sure my colleagues here can also address that there's very little engagement with the broader community, which has tremendous amounts of learning opportunity that is really kind of untapped and unengaged. So I think that's a challenge too, that the UOC from a relatively new school is something that they can kind of work with in their doctoral program.
I'm not sure that there is time now, because we've already pushed against the boundary, against the lunch break, and I don't want. Actually, can I just say, if you want to blame anyone, and I won't mention names, but the previous panel took a lot longer to discuss than they were supposed to. So if you're looking for blame, don't look at us. Okay. But we would. I'm sure all of us would love to further engage with you, either at lunch or this afternoon, or even online as well. Personally, it's been a great privilege for me to be here, because I've cited numerous works of yours, or in the process of citing numerous works of yours, particularly Anderson's model and interactions and presences. So it's been really great to have this experience to interact with you, and we look forward to continuing these types of interactions. Well, the one thing that kind of stood out as a takeaway from this morning for me is that although there's a lot of innovation happening, particularly from Dr. Bates said, is that there's a lot of innovation happening. There are questions about how innovative those innovations are, but more importantly is that those innovations tend to not get distributed throughout the organization. And as educators, how do we, and the previous panel discussed it, is how do we then try and help organizations change, so that those innovations don't become just pockets, but that they're spread throughout the organizations. So I think that's something that's a challenge for all of us to take with. From a personal point of view, I'm really excited about the discussion about lifelong learning, life-wide learning, and the mix of formal and informal, because that really ties into my conception of what learning is. And also the idea of that, again, and I think this comes from Yeshay's, what he wrote, was that, if the students aren't getting what they need from the professor, they'll be onto YouTube looking at that. And that's my experience with talking to students as well, where students are given, these 50-page readings and said, they go and read that and learn what you need to learn, and they're not learning what they need to learn. And so they're turning to YouTube. And so although maybe educators aren't making use of open educational resources, students are going online, looking at YouTube, trying to find resources, share resources to help their learning. So on behalf of the PhD colleagues, thank you very much for allowing us to be with you. Leia, thank you very much for sharing this time with us, and we look forward to the rest of the discussion with you. Thank you.